Yes, Worpel. In this presentation, I'm going to demonstrate my teaching stance in terms of pedagogy and the way my classroom will look. Firstly, it is important to note that I believe education is not and should not be a one-size-fits-all approach. For a productive pedagogy, Lingard, Hayes and Mills highlight 4 key essentials. These are intellectual quality, connectedness, supportive classroom environment, and valuing working with a difference. I feel that this appropriately represents the type of teacher I want to be and the classroom that I envision. I will be a teacher who can foster students' intellectual requirements as well as catering for their social and emotional needs, along with providing a safe and supportive classroom environment. This means valuing each individual in my classroom, assisting them to achieve their own personal best. Similarly, with Professor Joe Kinchelow, I believe that there is a strong emphasis to build relationships with students. Therefore, I consider my approach to be student-centred and constructivist. I am reflective in my practice and know that this skill will assist me continuously in improving in all aspects of my teaching. During this video presentation, I will present 3 of the graduate standards under the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers. I believe that the standards I have chosen, along with the evidence I am using to support my examples, successfully displays my teaching stance in practice. The first standard I'm going to focus on is Standard 1.2, which is understanding how students learn. Part of demonstrating my capability to fulfil this standard is not only understanding how students learn, but also consider the implications for teaching. This year, I've been fortunate enough to gain casual workers in education support at a small school of 98 students. This school has a structure from foundation to grade 6 called fluid grouping. This means that students either remain in their classroom level or move on to another classroom depending on their ability. This happens for both mathematics, reading and writing. As an example, a student in grade 2 who is not quite achieving the required skill level will be working in another grade of 1-2, like a 1-2 classroom that is taught at the correct level of their ability. As the grade can still consist of a large number, differentiation of tasks can still be required. I work with small groups to explicitly teach and work on learning goals. My example of fulfilling the standard came during a maths lesson whilst the class was learning about addition strategies. The specific Oswald's code was represent and solve simple addition and subtraction problems using a range of strategies, including counting on, partitioning and rearranging parts. I just began working specifically with a group of 3 students who were placed together according to their understanding of addition concepts. When I began working on counting on strategies with the use of a number line, student A, we'll call her, excelled and had no problems, even getting frustrated with student B for having difficulty with the counting on strategy. After several minutes of counting on, we began to look at rearranging parts. An example of this is working out the sum 9 plus 5. The way I taught this, I used concrete materials to show that we move the 1 from the 5 to make the 9 into the 10. Then we are left with 4. 4 plus 9 could be easier to work out than 5 plus 9 for some people. Student A was very confused by this and began to become frustrated when she did not understand and reverted back to the counting on strategy that she was more comfortable with. Student B was surprisingly very confident with this new rearranging part strategy to addition sums and developed a new, more efficient way of adding bigger numbers together rather than just counting on. I previously mentioned Kinchelow's emphasis to build relationships with students. He elaborates on this by stating that students need to be understood to be taught. The evidence that I just provided for the standard understanding how students learn is linked as the time spent working with those students, I was able to identify 2 different learning styles within students who were technically at the same ability level. This means that as I continue to work with them, I will be successful in teaching them suited to their learning style and need. And I'm now successful in knowing how they learn this concept. The second strategy I will be talking about is Standard 4.2, which is manage classroom activities. Part of the elaboration of this standard is demonstrating the capacity to organise classroom activities and provide clear directions. During my placement this year in a grade 2 class that I've been a part of grade 2 class, I've been a part of controlled literacy rotations. The class is split up into 5 groups depending on their reading ability, so that the students are suited to the others in their group. Each group is to work at a different station. This means that each morning of the week the students are able to move into a new activity, so by Friday they will have completed all of the tasks. To give you a bit of an idea how it works, one of the weeks I was there we were looking at suffixes. Group 1 worked with me on guided reading, and although we were noticing suffixes, our main goal was to work on comprehension. Group 2 were working on a suffix game on iPads individually, and groups 3, 4 and 5 were each working on different activities that required them to match base words to their suffixes to make sentences. Part of the hidden curriculum in this is that the students knew at the beginning of the week they were given instruction for all of the activities. They knew their groups, they knew the structure, and they were able to move fluently and smoothly through the process. There was no need to interrupt myself working with the guided reading group, because if they needed help, they could just seek assistance from somebody else in their group. With this in mind, I decided to run stations for a few of my maths lessons. My favourite example of this was when I was teaching problem-solving strategies. I set the classroom up into 4 groups, 1 group on each table. I modelled an addition and subtraction problem, discussing my thinking strategies and how I worked out the answer and to find the sum. I then grouped the class strategically so that any students I thought may have struggled could use the buddy up system to assist their learning and learn from the discussion with their peers in the group. Each table had a problem to solve. Once each group had been to each of the 4 stations, we worked with their group to find an answer. We then came back to the floor to share and go through any of the answers, or through all of the answers as a whole class. In general, I was happy to hear and see some of the varied ways of working out that the students had done and their reasoning behind it. As a part of my reflective practice, I wonder if I grouped students according to their ability levels, would the students have struggled a little bit, that did struggle a little bit more, have benefited from having me guide them through rather than their peers? Or if I were in another class where there wasn't much variability in problem-solving skills, the buddy system might not have been as successful. During this, I managed to make a secondary curriculum link. Rather than just focusing on mathematics, the purpose of working in groups was to build on teamwork. For level 1 and 2, the interpersonal development talks about students being able to work in teams to complete structured activities within a set time frame. Students learn to stay on task, and in response to the question and prompts, they learn to reflect on the team's challenges and successes and their contribution to the team's effectiveness, which is part of the sharing that we did at the end of this maths lesson. The third and final standard that I'm focusing on for this presentation is standard 5.5, which is report on student achievement. The elaboration for this standard is regarding that not only am I able to demonstrate an understanding of a range of strategies for reporting to students and parents or carers, I can also provide examples of keeping accurate and reliable records of student achievement. During my professional experience throughout this year, I have had the opportunity to plan and teach a sequence of maths lessons. This included a pre and post test and analysing the results. I took a week on transformation for my grade 2 class. With the pre-test, I was able to work out exactly where the focus area was, as I didn't have a lot of time to teach it. I found that the majority of the students were comfortable with the terms flip, turn and slide. So therefore I began to focus on other terminology such as rotate, translate and reflect. The other major area of need, however, was half and quarter turns, which was a requirement in the curriculum to teach. With this information, I was able to target half and quarter turns particularly, and use prior mathematical knowledge of telling the time to aid in understanding, so quarter past and half past on a clock. I was surprised to see that in the post-test, some of the students still struggled with the concept of quarter and half turns. However, overall, I was able to enter the results into an Excel grid and show the to show a vast improvement in the pre and post-test results. The reason I stuck to the same test for the pre and post-test is to keep it a fair variable on student achievement. If the test is different, I feel that it's not a fair comparison on what the students have shown that they know before the unit is taught and how they have understood it on conclusion of it being taught. These are my examples of both diagnostic and summative assessment, or rather assessment for and assessment of. As I mentioned previously, I work casually as an education support. I've recently started partaking in the recording of the work I do with the students that I'm working with. An app called Evernote that all of the teachers use at the school. It allows me to take a photo, voice message, or leave a note on a student's profile. Using this app is a way I've demonstrated both the recording of formative, or rather assessment as, and keeping accurate and reliable notes on student achievement for the classroom teacher to then be able to use for reports, as she can then use quotes that I've provided which can show that the student has achieved the success criteria. I hope that you have enjoyed the examples and evidence that I have shared with you to demonstrate my capability to fulfil the 3 AITSL standards that I spoke about, whilst indicating my ability to understand how students learn, manage classroom activities and report on student achievement. I believe that I have left you with some wholesome examples of how my classroom would look and operate with my philosophy of a student-centred approach, by giving insight into my pedagogy and practice of providing a fair, equal and safe learning environment for all of my students, whilst building relationships that cater for their intellectual need as well as their social and emotional requirements. Thank you.